What's going on there, YouTube? And welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. Guys, this is the channel that we basically sit down and cover different kinds of comic book stories. Now, guys, today we are going to jump back over to Marvel Comics and continue our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And today we're going to pick up with Ultimate Origins. Now, Ultimate Origins is basically giving us the origin of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. But this storyline also gives us some key information we are going to need once we begin covering Ultimatum. And so guys, I do hope you like today's video because this storyline is honestly pretty cool. But I do hope you enjoy. This is where we pick up 6 months in the past from the present day of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, where we pick up with Spider-Man and Bruce Banner in a random warehouse. This is where you have Bruce trying to tell Spider-Man that everything is connected, that everyone in the Ultimate Marvel Universe is connected to one another. And somebody is trying to hide it. But while Bruce Banner is trying to explain how they are connected, that is when you have General Ross appear with his army to capture Bruce Banner. Now, Spider-Man has no idea that this is the Hulk. He only met the Hulk. He never met Bruce Banner until now. And so he is confused why the army is trying to capture this man. Except this leads into Bruce Banner turning into the Hulk, where of course you have the Hulk able to get away from the army and leaving Spider-Man confused on what Bruce Banner meant earlier. We then jump back to the year 1942, where we pick up with the American Army fighting in World War II, which is something that is heavily tied into almost every single Marvel timeline. This is where we get introduced to the American first super soldier, but not really. What I mean is that the American Army put a man in a suit and had him pretend to be some kind of super soldier, but this man is shot and killed in a matter of seconds. And so you have photos sent back to the president, and you have the president tell his staff that he is tired of seeing a fake super soldier. He wants a real super soldier to stand for something, and he wants it now. This is where we pick up the next year in the year 1943, where we pick up with Nick Fury, Wolverine, and also a soldier named Fisk, who is the grandfather to Wilson Fisk. Now, Wolverine being here makes sense, because Wolverine is an old man who's been around for a while. His healing factor keeps him young, but Nick Fury being here is a shocker, because this whole time in the Ultimate Marvel Universe, it was never told to us that Nick was in World War II. And we pick up with the three men right now trying to steal stuff from a house after a battle, where you have the military police arrive and arrest all three men for trying to steal stuff. This leads into later on in the day where we pick up with Nick Fury, who is locked up in a prison cell with a few other soldiers. Now, something to point out is that all of these soldiers who are locked up in this prison are all African American. And this is where we learn every soldier in this cell are just future test subjects for the super soldier program. And right now you have Nick Fury being selected as the next one up to be tested on. Now in the morning, we see them begin to get ready to test on Nick Fury. Now this is a huge thing here, because this is telling us that Steve Rogers is not the first super soldier, that the first person to become a super soldier is really Nick Fury. And this is a huge plot twist for the character, because this whole time in Ultimate Marvel, it was never hinted that Nick Fury could have been a super soldier. But this story here is telling us that he is the first. Now, when they give him the super soldier serum, of course, he is able to take it without any horrible side effect. But after he turns into a super soldier, we see him being able to break out of his binds and actually being able to escape the facility. And the army does not go after him, except you have Malcolm Colcord, tell them with Nick Fury being a successful test subject, they know how to make more of the serum now. Now this is where we jump to the Weapon X facility, where of course you know the place that made Wolverine who he is today, except in this universe, while Wolverine is being tested on by Weapon X, we come to find out that Weapon X kept testing on him and have altered a gene inside of him. The gene that was altered turns into an X gene. A X gene makes someone a mutant, meaning that man made mutants, and Wolverine is the first mutant. But they have taken his mutant gene and released it as some kind of airborne virus to see if other people will turn into mutants, where of course people do. Now we pick up in the present day, and we pick up with the Fantastic Four arriving at this SHIELD facility called Project Pegasus. And this is not the first time we heard about this place, because back in that horrible Ultimate Power storyline, we saw the Serpent Squad looking for something called the Serpent Crown, and they heard it was being held in a place called Project Pegasus. But we pick up with the Fantastic Four arriving at this facility where you have them be greeted by Carol Danvers, who is the person currently running SHIELD, and Agent Wendell. We learn that Project Pegasus is this place where SHIELD hold artifacts they have no idea what they are. Now Agent Wendell says that some of these artifacts date before Nick Fury took over SHIELD. And the reason why the Fantastic Four were called here is because an artifact just randomly turned on. And Agent Wendell says there are no files on this artifact, and so they do not know what to do with it. And this artifact is going to be the main plot point of this whole story. We then jump back to the year 1942, where we pick up with Steve Rogers going to the recruiting office, where he is trying again to join the army, where of course they keep telling him no. His body size is not up to par to join the army. Plus, he has all of these health conditions as well. And so you know he's turned away, except that is when the recruiter gets a call from the back office, where you have Sergeant Dugan appear and tell Steve Rogers that there is a way to get his body up to par so he can join the army. And so this is where we jump over into the next day, where you see Steve Rogers meeting Malcolm Kukoid, the man who made the super soldier serum, and now is planning to give it to Steve Rogers, because thanks to Nick Fury, he knows what he needs to do to make it work. And so this leads to them putting Steve Rogers in a chair, where of course this leads into giving him the super soldier serum. And by the next page, we get Captain America of the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Except this leads to a problem, and that is where we see there is a Nazi soldier in the building, where he was this secret spy for the Nazi army, but he shoots Steve Rogers in the shoulder. Of course, Steve is okay, but this leads into the next problem. This spy ends up killing Malcolm Kukoid, and with him dead, this of course means that the secret behind the super soldier serum is lost forever, because this man is the only man who knew how to make it. Now you have Steve Rogers show that he has abilities now thanks to the super soldier serum, and he uses his new abilities to take down the Nazi spy. But before we jump forward the next day, we actually see another Stonehead thing like the one we saw in the present day inside Project Pegasus here now, and we see this thing recording what has happened here in this facility. But after all of that, we see Steve Rogers waiting in this room and waiting for instructions on what he should do. And so you have the president come and visit him, where you have the president tell him that he wants him to join the army and help fight in World War II, but be a symbol for America to look up to and believe in. We also see before he joins the war, he actually goes back home to say goodbye to Gail, where we see that they are a couple now, and he tells her about him leaving for the war. But we jump back to the present day and we go back to the Project Pegasus, where we pick up with the Fantastic Four, Carol Danvers, and Agent Wendell. But they are still trying to figure out what is going on with this Stonehead thing that randomly turned on. Now you have Reed mentioning that most of the files in this place are about each of these artifacts, and some of these files' original date was when World War II was going on, and most things made in that time were to be weapons. And so you have Reed thinking that this could be a bomb, and they run out of the building just in case it is a bomb. But when they get outside, Carol Danvers gets a phone call. This is where we learn that a bunch more of these Stonehead things started to appear around the world. Places where superheroes are places superheroes have some kind of connection to. And this is just adding on to the mystery what these things are. And people are really trying to figure out what these Stonehead things are, because now there is more than one. But we jump back 27 years ago, and we once again pick back up at Weapon X, where of course we pick up with Wolverine. But we pick up this time with Wolverine meeting Magneto for the first time. Except meeting Magneto when he is a teenager. Of course, he already has his powers, but this is where we learn how Wolverine escaped Weapon X. Magneto felt bad for what they were doing to Wolverine, and so he uses his powers to break Wolverine out of his binds. And to show how dark Magneto is in this universe, we learn that his mother was hired by Weapon X to find a cure for mutants just in case they have to use it in the future. But Magneto kills his mother for thinking less about mutants. But we jump back to the point where now it is only 18 years ago from the present day, where we pick up with Charles Xavier teaching a class, but someone walks into the room while he is teaching. Of course, it is Magneto, and this is telling us about the day Magneto met Charles Xavier for the first time, where Magneto somehow knows that Charles Xavier is a mutant and knows that he has psychic powers. And so Magneto is able to start a conversation with Charles Xavier through their minds. But we also learn that Charles Xavier cannot read Magneto's mind for some reason. And this leads into Charles Xavier and Magneto learning more about each other. And you have Magneto show Charles Xavier his powers, and they bond a little bit. But you have Magneto tell Charles Xavier how he read his book and he really liked it, to the point where he liked the idea that Charles Xavier had with taking all of the mutants around the world and going to their own island or something. But this leads to us going to the Savage Land 2 years after they met. At this point, Magneto and Charles Xavier already discovered the Savage Land, and Charles Xavier left for a little bit but has come back to check up on Magneto, where we learn Magneto already began the process of bringing mutants to the Savage Land as a way to build a nation away from humans. But this is where you have Magneto tell Charles Xavier his origin, that both of his parents worked for Weapon X. His father was abusive, and when his dad tried to kill Magneto, Magneto stopped the bullet in midair and shot it back at his father, killing him. And then goes on to tell Charles Xavier about how he was the one who freed the first mutant from Weapon X. And that is what inspired him to go around the world and free mutants. But this is where we see Charles Xavier and Magneto agree to build a nation here in the Savage Land. And while they are celebrating, we see another stone appear, and again recording everything that is happening right now. This is where we pick up in COPPA, and we are still in the past, but this is where we pick up with Wolverine carrying Nick Fury, who is badly injured. Now, if you remember a long time ago, when we first began covering Ultimate X-Men, Nick Fury stated that he knew Wolverine because Wolverine saved his life one time. This is the moment right here. Nick Fury got injured and Wolverine carried him back to the military base. But this story builds on that moment. because when Nick Fury gets back to base, a few hours have passed by and he is almost fully healed, except he lost an eye. And so he is visited by General Ross, who tells him he knows about his secret, that Nick Fury is the first super soldier that went missing in World War II, the one who came before Steve Rogers. Now you have General Ross state that the new president of America also knows about the one super soldier that got away. But with Nick Fury popping back up after all these years since World War II, the president wants to restart the super soldier program, because to him, the next war will be a genetic war, a war against mutants to be more exact. And so General Ross is offering Nick Fury to help out with that, where of course you have Nick Fury agree to help out with the super soldier program. We then pick up 1 year later, but still in the past, where we pick up with Nick Fury introducing us to the team he put together to remake the super soldier serum, where we find out the team he put together was Hank Pym, Bruce Banner, Franklin Richards, and Richard Parker. Now this is kind of huge, because before this book it was never referenced that Franklin Richards, the father to Johnny Storm and Susan Storm, and Richard Parker, the father of Spider-Man, worked on the super soldier serum until now. But we learn that the sample they get to work on comes from Nick Fury and not Steve Rogers to restart the super soldier program. This leads us 2 years after the program was restarted, and the team has not been able to crack the code they need to get a perfect sample of the super soldier serum. But at this point we learn that around this time, Peter Parker was just born, except this is where we see Hank Pym and Bruce Banner talking to one another about a sample Bruce Banner has made, thinking that his sample should work perfectly fine. But he wants to test it on himself first to see if it does work. Now we know this leads to him becoming the Hulk, because in the first Ultimates book, we were told that Bruce Banner became the Hulk by trying to recreate the super soldier serum. This is where we see it happens. As soon as Bruce Banner injects his sample inside of him, we see Richard Parker and his wife checking up on Bruce, only to see that Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk for the first time and blowing up the testing lab in the process. Now, when this book first came out, it had people believe that the Hulk was the one who killed the Parkers, which made Peter Parker go live with his Uncle Ben and his Aunt May. Now with this happening, it does contradict Brian Michael Bendis' earlier Ultimate Spider-Man stories, because we were told that Peter's parents were killed by Trask over the Venom suit. After this story was done, Brian Michael Bendis had to come out in an interview and tell us that they were not killed by the Hulk, they were just badly injured, then apparently left the super soldier program and moved on to make the Venom suit, which did get them killed later on. But of course, after Bruce Banner turned into the Hulk, you had Nick Fury capture him and lock him up. But this leads us back to the present day, where we once again pick up with the Fantastic Four still at Project Pegasus building. But this is where we finally learn about what these stone rock things are, the ones that just have been appearing throughout this whole book, where the one near the Fantastic Four takes over Susan Storm's mind, where it talks through her mind and tells us that this is this universe version of the Watcher, a being that just watches what is happening on this earth, but also tells us that something big is coming. Now you have the Watcher tell us that he has been watching the earth for years, which we know that by now since we saw it back when Steve Rogers became Captain America. But you also have the Watcher tell everyone who is in the building of Project Pegasus that after watching other planets like Earth across the universe, with everything going on right now with the mutants, the Ultimates, and any other problem that is happening out there, a huge big thing is coming to this planet. some big event is going to happen and change the earth completely. And this thing will happen because the people of Earth led the planet to this moment. And so the Watcher says it will select a chosen one to help guide the Earth after the big event to lead the people of Earth in the right direction once again. This is where we jump back to the present day once again, where we pick up with Nick Fury, and we see him and some of his agents going to the Weapon X building, where they find out that what Weapon X truly is. And this is important because Weapon X has been lying to the governments of the world that their base was some kind of base for training soldiers. But when Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. agents get there, they find out that really this is some kind of lab. And this is the moment where you have Nick Fury find out that man created mutants. And so you have Nick Fury burn the building down because if the world finds out that humans made mutants, or mutants found out that humans made mutants, it's gonna cause the whole world to go mad. We also see that Black Panther is there as well because he is a mutant in this universe and they were testing on him as well. But Nick Fury takes him with him and they burn down the Weapon X facility. But we then jump to the Savage Land and we are still in the past, but we pick up with Magneto and Charles Xavier once again. Except this is the moment where they became enemies. Charles Xavier believes that humans and mutants can live together. Magneto does not. And to him, mutants were selected to kill off humans and rule the world. And so with them disagreeing, Magneto attacks Charles Xavier hoping to kill him for denying what he believes to be the truth. That God created mutants to kill humans. That God created Magneto to lead mutants to this new world, and he is going to do it. But to close this story, we pick back up in the present day with the Fantastic Four again. And you have the Watcher finally let go of controlling Susan Storm and leaving the Fantastic Four and S.H.I.E.L.D. to wonder what big event is coming. Also leaving them to wonder who is the person that has been chosen to lead the Earth in the right direction after the big event that's supposed to be coming to Earth. And we learn right off the bat who the person who was chosen to lead the people of Earth. That one person was Rick Jones. And what sucks about this ending is that we do not see Rick Jones in the Ultimate Marvel Universe again until after Ultimatum, but in the Ultimate Spider-Man book. But this is the end of this story. So guys, I do hope you enjoyed today's comic book video, and if you did, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe for more comic book stories like this in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later guys.